So Lamar Jackson, a bust candidate for 2024 fantasy football. Allow me to explain. This is the Fantasy Sports Boss. Guys, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, I'll know what you're doing. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Lots of good stuff coming your way over the next couple of weeks. And of course, into the season with live streams, instant player injury updates, and everything that goes along with it during the slate of games on Sunday. But I wanted to talk about Jackson today. Now, anybody who's been a subscriber of the channel over the years knows the affinity I have for Lamar Jackson. I had Lamar Jackson for both of his MVP seasons. I won leagues both of the years he was the MVP, including last year I won a league with him. So I have a lot of respect and an affinity for Jackson as a player, and because he's helped me win quite a bit in fantasy football, it goes without saying that he's one of the most dominant players in the game, no matter the position, no doubt about it. I mean, already 2 MVPs and he's 27 years old. So, and his performance in the fantasy football championship last year was an all-time great performance, like the stuff that fantasy legends are made of. I mean, let's just put it that way. That said, though, I'm actually going to fade Lamar Jackson this season. And I've never done that before. I always seem to end up with shares of Jackson every year. I don't see it this year. And the reason why, and I'll start right off the bat, at this very moment, Jackson is the 4th quarterback off the board, behind the big 3 of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. So, and last year he was a 5th quarterback off the board. But I was willing to dive in on him. And I didn't even draft Jackson last year. Let me just put it that way. So I did, the league that I won with Jackson as my quarterback, I traded Jalen Hurts for him. There were other players involved, but midway through the course of the season, because I didn't like the way Jalen Hurts was playing. I thought he was beat up, and I thought Jackson was going to be able to have a big finish. And of course, that's exactly what took place. But this year, as QB4, he is being drafted right now, in the beginning of the 4th round. And that's a pretty pricey position to be in. And here's the thing, too. Last year, Jackson finished as a QB4. All right, so, that's great. I mean, that's still a good finish, QB4 overall in fantasy. But he's being drafted as a QB4 now. And guys that are being drafted behind him, namely Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, all 4 of those guys, nobody would be shocked if they finished ahead of Jackson as a QB 1, 2, or 3. But they're being drafted behind him. So you get more bang for your fantasy dollars when you draft those 4 as opposed to Jackson. Now, can Jackson finish QB 1 or 2 or 3? Yeah, of course. But there is a smaller margin of error for Jackson than for others, and I'll explain. So last year, the first year of Todd Monken's stewardship as the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, there was a lot of excitement. The thinking was, they're going to open up the offense. Jackson's going to be throwing balls all over the place. He's going to be running all over the place. There's going to be touchdowns coming from every direction. But that's not exactly what happened. Jackson was only 17th in the NFL in pass attempts, and it obviously, the fact that you're not throwing as many passes is not going to lead to as many potential fantasy points. So 17th in the NFL. This was a very run-heavy offense. And that was with Gus Edwards as a primary runner. Now they bring in Derrick Henry, right? All-pro Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs of the modern era. He is now here to be that bell cow back, to take a lot of the running opportunities away from Jackson. And then when you look at Jackson's numbers last year, 3,678 yards. He didn't cross the 4,000-yard threshold. 24 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. It's a great ratio, but 24 touchdown passes is not exactly a lot. Now, rushing yards, 821 rushing yards. That is tremendous. Like, that is something that just about, other than Justin Fields, who's not a starter, Jalen Hurts is not going to get to 800 rushing yards. No other quarterback. Anthony Richardson could if he stays healthy, but no other quarterback outside of Richardson are going to get those that kind of rushing yards. So that is extremely valuable, but only 5 touchdowns on the ground. The year before that, 3 rushing touchdowns. The year before that, 2 rushing touchdowns. So only 10 rushing touchdowns the last 3 years combined. So you would think Jackson's got all these rushing touchdowns. No, the Ravens, whether it was under, Todd Monken, previous offensive coordinators, Greg Roman, they don't run him around the goal line, unlike the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts, unlike the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. Allen last year, 15 rushing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts last year, 15 rushing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson, only 5. So we can't factor that into his expected production. He's not going to get 4,000 yards passing. he probably won't get more than 25 passing touchdowns, and he's not going to rush for more than 5. All right? And that is before we have Derrick Henry in town, who is much more accomplished than Gus Edwards, who had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. Just imagine what Derrick Henry is going to be able to do. Probably 15. They're not going to run Jackson around the goal line. They don't want him to get hurt. And that brings me to that aspect as well. Jackson can be brittle. He played only 12 games back in 2021. Only 12 games in 2022. Played in 16 last year. That's great. But his trend is to miss time with injury. So when you draft Jackson, you're also now factoring in some missed time. So as the QB4, that is pricey to me. I don't see at that price range the payoff that you can get from a CJ Stroud, a Joe Burrow, heck, even a Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, all of those guys who are being, Jordan Love, I didn't even mention him, all the guys that are being drafted behind Lamar Jackson, and that are cheaper, in some cases quite a bit cheaper. That is where the value lies. That is why I think Lamar Jackson, while again, he could still be the QB1, I think he's going to disappoint at his current price point more than anything else. So just be wary of that. Let me know what you think about that. Hit the subscribe button, post in the comments. We'll chat soon.